Good morning again. We are now here for Keynote A, which is best practices for staying resilient during your recovery. We have a keynote panel, and I'm going to turn it over to, I think, to Anita Kelly, who is going to be coordinating this panel presentation. Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay. So welcome, everyone. I'm Anita Kelly, and I am with Magellan Healthcare of Pennsylvania. It's great to see you all here. And we have a great panel for you here today. And I am going to pass the microphone and let our panelists introduce themselves. I just wanted to let you know that there will be cards available, and those cards are to provide spaces for you to write questions. If you have questions for the panelists, write them on the card. Aubrey and Pam will be coming around to collect those, and we will be answering those as time permits. And any question that we do not have time to answer, we will provide answers, and after the conference, it will be on the Harvest of Hope website. So I just wanted to let you know that. So I'll turn it over to Cynthia.
Oh, thank you, Anita. Good morning. My name is Cynthia Phillips. I'm program manager with Danny's Ride. I'm very happy to be here this morning, and thank you all for attending.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Maggie Murphy. I'm the executive director of NAMI Lehigh Valley. NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Hi, good morning. I'm Gordon Hornick. I am with St. Luke's Penn Foundation for about 30 years, and I run and I am the director of the Mobile Engagement Services, which is a community-based program.
Great. It's so great to have you all here today. And we are talking about best practices for staying resilient during recovery. So this is a question for all of our panelists. How does your organization define resiliency? So Gordon, do you want to go first?
Sure. I would say resiliency, or we should say St. Luke's, it's an attitude. It's an attitude that has a basis in hope. And I think anyone that looks at recovery can see that hope is a cornerstone of moving forward.
And I think I would simply add to that resiliency isn't just one thing. We can have different levels of resiliency at different times in our lives. And it's also being truly resilient also means that not only do you get through an adverse experience, but you're open to being able to grow from that.
And just to add to that, if you think of resiliency as being able to adapt to adverse conditions, in order to do that, everyone needs support. I mean, I think about the people surviving the hurricane, Milton and Helene. They were resilient, but did they do it on their own? No. And are they doing it on their own? No. They have FEMA, they have family, they have church. They have numerous groups and people supporting them. We all need support. And that's how Danny's Ride believes we can support resiliency, by offering transportation and connecting the dots for people in recovery so that they can get the support they need.
I like that, Cynthia. It's almost it takes a village, right? And we all are part of that village to help each other. Yep. All right. So let's move on. And this is another question for everyone. Describe how resiliency can impact one's recovery efforts. And if you can, share an example of how you have seen resiliency help an individual's recovery, either through an individual story or in general. So, Gordon, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, I love the fact that I can share a story, because I think that we want our stories out there. Sometimes it's so hard to define how someone has navigated and their resilience has got them through that. So when I said about the definition, that hope, and really just kind of borrowing on my colleagues too, that it's not just a one-time burst of hope, but it's over and over and over. We make it through it. And I was thinking about this one particular person who I met a couple of months ago, and she's 32, she was living in the woods with her boyfriend, with a couple other people, and since COVID, this has been a really difficult time. Housing is a big part of recovery, right? And whether it's transient housing or not, but they were in the woods. And so a street outreach person called our program and said, would you come out? They're talking about wanting to get healthy. So I went out and met with them, and it was a pretty rough area. Not only is living in the woods rough, but there were, river rats. There was no food. It was a difficult time. I also found out that this young lady was pregnant, and she was over 20-some weeks pregnant. So pretty difficult time. Probably the first step that we took was her beginning to trust me and her boyfriend trusting me. They were away from people because I think they've been hurt so many times in their recovery paths, and both of them probably had 10+ years of some recovery and some relapses. So after about 2.5 weeks of meeting and just getting to know them, building this relationship, she said, I would like to seek out treatment. And so if you're not aware of someone that's pregnant, not only are we concerned for them, but we're concerned about this baby that's going to be born. And so we started sharing information with her about getting on medication-assisted treatment, which we're going to hopefully talk about a little bit today, but the steps to do that. And it's not an easy path just to put someone into treatment. I mean, there's not a lot of programs that support pregnant women. So we figured out a plan, and it took about another 1.5 weeks for her to finally make a decision that I do want to do this. So we transported her down to an ER where we were able to have an ultrasound. We had to make sure that the baby was viable. So that was a good thing. That process took almost half a day. And in that process, our next thought was we were going to then take her to a program that would start her on methadone. And then from there, we would transfer her to the inpatient program that would guest dose her. So that they allowed us to take her over each week, get her medication, bring her back, and continue. So a lot of hurdles, as you can see. You can start to see the resilience of this client and going through what she went through. But unfortunately, when we were done the ultrasound, we had passed a timetable to get into the methadone program. We didn't want to send her back to the wooded area because she had already taken this step. So we were able to connect with one of the affiliate hospitals who actually put her up for the night, did more testing, started her on methadone, and the next morning we picked her up 8 o'clock in the morning, which most hospitals won't discharge someone 8 o'clock in the morning, right? Got her over to the methadone clinic. That intake process took about 4 or 5 hours, so it's a pretty long time period. And again, seeing the resilience with this young lady, what she's going through. And then eventually we got her to the inpatient program. During her time at the inpatient program, which was a little over 5 or 6 weeks, her boyfriend came up to visit, so we would pick him up. Despite his ongoing use, he had not entered in treatment, we still wanted them to stay connected. That was a big thing for her, staying connected to him, and for him as well. I'm really happy to tell you, she had a baby about 1.5 weeks ago. The baby is healthy, stayed a couple extra days, but her struggles are still continuing. She's in a Mommy and Me program, and we are working now on housing. So she had to leave the hospital 2 days before her baby could leave the hospital, but now they are all reunited. But I just think that's an awesome story to share of the work of so many people and how resilient this young lady was in making it through and really staying focused on her recovery. And I just hope that resonates with you and just sears. And really, it's meaningful to me as well because it drives me when someone can take those steps in resiliency. It's just amazing. So.
That's amazing, Gordon. Really is. That's a lot of stick-to-itness for one individual to encounter in like a short succession of time. That's great. Thank you. And Cynthia, would you like
Well,
to
that's
share?
hard to follow, Gordon, so that's a wonderful story. Danny's right, as I said, we are into providing supports for people to become resilient and remain resilient. So that support for Danny's Ride means getting you to the treatment that you need. So it's always, we're there, we believe in your humanity and your right to be treated as a human being. And we strive for that by providing transportation to any treatment service you may need in your recovery. What I do is I send out surveys every quarter to people who have used our services. We have, I think since our program began in 2020, about 22,000 rides that we've given to people getting to treatment. And I will say that a lot of these people would not have gotten where they needed to be without Danny's Ride. I get phone calls, please, I need a ride. I'm able to connect people to the right treatment service centers who can coordinate the rides. It's amazing. But to back this up, because we need grants to continue our funding, we need the data. And so I send out the surveys, and the numbers are astounding. It came back that 86.5% of our respondents said that they would not have gotten where they needed to go had it not been for Danny's Ride. That means that they would not have had the resiliency they needed. They were all ready to get there, but they had no ride. So not only is it just, I got where I needed to go, what does that mean? It means for some people, they did not end up in jail. They were able to meet the court requirements to keep them out of jail. One individual told me she was able to get her child back. I'm sorry, I get all teary-eyed when I think these are the individual people. Gordon had one individual, and all individuals are amazing. Getting a job, keeping a job, the list goes on. And I think giving people the hope that they can make it through recovery, and that's what Danny's Ride does. And I think having that information just makes me feel good every day that we're doing what we do.
That's awesome. You know, and I think that vision of hope is just something that people need, they hang on to. So thank you. Thank you, Cynthia. And Maggie?
I have a couple of examples. The first is a friend of mine who lives with bipolar disorder. And when COVID started and everything locked down, I was really worried about her. And I called her and said, how are you doing? Are you okay with this? And she said, are you kidding? I have been preparing for this my whole adult life. I know how to keep a routine. I know when to ask for help. I'm taking care of myself physically. I'm making sure I'm in touch with my friends by phone and Zoom, if not other ways. I've got this. And that's really somebody who's built resilience, who's, really worked on this and made an effort to make sure that she knew what she needed to do to take care of herself so that she could take care of herself. And she wasn't doing that, as we've mentioned. It's not one person. She made sure she was in touch with others and used their support so that she would be okay. And the second example is our NAMI's amazing program facilitators. All of NAMI's support programs, education programs, et cetera, are led by either individuals or families with lived experience. And particularly our individual leaders have, they've gone through some pretty difficult situations, and now they're in recovery, and they've worked hard to achieve that recovery. And now they've seen the value of that experience, and they know how important it is for other people to understand that there is hope. They model where somebody can get to, and resilience is a big part of that. And so it's really taking that experience and doing something important with it is part of resilience as well.
Thank you, Maggie. Those are great stories. I appreciate that. And I just want to say, I'm so impressed with everything you all are doing. It's wonderful. Yeah, thank you. And I'm going to shift gears here a little bit. And this is, I'm going to talk specifically to Gordon. We all know, we've all heard of Narcan, and Narcan is considered a successful harm reduction strategy. In our everyday lives, harm reduction includes things like putting filters on cigarettes or using car seats for kids. And those are things that we just We just do, right? But when we talk about harm reduction in the substance use world, sometimes there's a stigma involved with that. And so I wanted to ask Gordon, what harm reduction techniques would you recommend be available in our community in addition to Narcan?
So I mentioned briefly, the position that I get to be in, I'm out in the community, and I think when we talk about harm reduction, sometimes we're thinking about, medications specifically, but programming is a harm reduction process. Traditionally, a lot of programs are abstinence-based, and so individuals who aren't quite at that point where they're able to stop the substance use maybe don't seek out the help. And I think programs like the one, and we just started in Lehigh County, so I'm so grateful that, the drug and alcohol program said, yeah, we want to get people out there connecting with people, even if they're actively using. I mean, the impact that has, I shared that story of the young lady, and, imagine if we just worked with her and forgot about the boyfriend. So, my work is ongoing with him, and I shouldn't say my work, it's our work. It's all of these services. We've used Andy Ride. We send family members who are connected. We find out who is connected to who. There's an excellent book, Stephen Covey, 7 Habits, and we talk about this circle of influence, and we find out who influences this person. How do we connect with them? And so a harm reduction technique is getting out there and doing the service, providing programs that do that. And I know there's all different programs, like 12-step programs. That's a harm reduction. We're looking past the stereotypes that are out there, and we're still giving them the help. We're not turning people away. Connecting someone and saying, hey, will you mentor this person, and begin to talk about and provide that hope really for them so they can begin to be resilient. Some of the darkest days that people have are struggling. I'm thinking of a technique or a process besides just medication, but if you've been walking around, if you work in the field, one of the great things that came out over the last year, or maybe a little bit longer than a year, is there's test strips to test what the drug is out there. So we know Narcan can reverse the overdoses, but there's test strips out there for your xylazine, for your fentanyl. So individuals, they're thinking they're purchasing one particular drug to have an effect. They're not anticipating that it's going to have fentanyl in it and they're going to overdose. And so that's another harm reduction that's out there that's readily available. I mean, you pretty much can go to any program. Even some of the drop-off centers have it available. So that's important. I also think harm reduction is, look at, in our valley here, Mars program has walking assessments, multiple times a day. So you can just go through the door. And that's important, that we need to be able to go through any door to access treatment. So having that available, we have the 24-hour, really any door, your warm handoffs in the hospitals. So you may be presenting for one issue, but as your assessment's taking place, they identify there's additional help, whether it be mental health or it may be drug and alcohol. So I am encouraging all of you, don't think of harm reduction just as a medication. Think of it as an approach that's going to get people healthy.
Great advice. Thank you, Gordon. Maggie, you are aware of some things going on in Northampton County with Narcan. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. And first, I think, we all know that can be a tremendous overlap between mental illness and alcohol and substance use disorder. So I think Narcan is really important in the mental health community. Northampton County is distributing Narcan for free now. I think somebody said there are about 50 different locations where you can just walk up and get it. There is a box outside the Human Services Building on Emmerich Boulevard. And, it's simple now. It's a nasal spray. It's easy to administer. And I just think it's so important to have on hand because it gives people another chance. And they can start over or start again. And I know that Northampton County Mental health has a table here today, and I suspect they have some Narcan there that they would be distributing. Don't tell them I sent you, because if they get overwhelmed. But I think it's really important to have on hand.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. And go ahead, Gordon. Did you?
Yeah, so one of the important, I say this very humbly, I think it was about 2013 and 14, Narcan came out. And, I was one of the proponents that wasn't in favor of it. I came out of law enforcement, and my stereotype that I learned was that, oh no, we're just putting a medication out there that people are going to use, they're going to get better, they're going to keep using. And I sadly say that to you, but I say it to you because my eyes were open. I don't know if you know, but about 25,000 people have been saved since Narcan came out. 25,000 people. So I got caught in the behavior part. And yes, some people do Narcan and they continue to use. But 25,000 people are alive today. And I'm in the business of helping save lives, getting people healthy and happy again. So what a huge change for me. And one of the things that we promote, so not only the drop-ins, but your police departments, is educating them about, it's about saving lives. So I went from here all the way over to here. And just wanted to share that because I know there's more people today where I was, 10 years ago, and we need to change that.
That's so important. That's an important message. Thanks for saying that, Gordon. That just speaks to the stigma involved with harm reduction. And in addition to Northampton County having a table downstairs, but also Lehigh County representatives are here today as well. Yeah, so great. Thank you all. And let's see. This is a question for Cynthia and Maggie. Do you think that an individual with more treatment needs will require a greater degree of resiliency?
I think I'll start. Just thank you. Yes, without a doubt. I get calls, when I get calls, which I'm always getting calls, people are overwhelmed. I mean, you can imagine. How do I get from A to B? How can I make this treatment center appointment? How can I get to this urine test on time when they call me at 6 o'clock in the morning and I have to get someplace? So take your daily life and add all of these pressures, and it's almost insurmountable. And that's why, again, I come back to support. So the best way we can support is, yes, we can get you the ride, but we can't really get you the ride unless everyone knows that rides are available. So it's really going back to the village. Every day I get a call from a treatment center or from a counselor. Oh, I heard you give out free rides. How do I get into this program? How can I get my person a ride? If I don't get my client a ride, there's a bed open. He's going to be homeless tonight. What can you do for me? I can't do everything, but as a group, as a community, Gordon said that he's used Danny's ride. It just is like a trickle-down effect. The more people who get out there, the more people we can save. We have Narcan, we have rides to treatment. It's hard out there, and I think the more that we can provide to help that resiliency is going to make a difference down the road. It's a lot.
Okay, thank you. And Maggie?
Everybody needs a degree of resilience, no matter what our situations are. But I think if someone has if their needs are being met, if they have that support, then they may need less of that individual resiliency if they've got the support of whoever their family and community is. If those needs aren't being met, then boy, somebody really needs to have resilience, because as you just said, Cynthia, things that seem as simple as having transportation can be a tremendous barrier to treatment, even when somebody's ready to receive that treatment. So I think it's just across the board, resiliency is really important for recovery.
Yeah, definitely. And I think resiliency helps when you have a lack of those, what we call social determinants of health, right? And transportation, as it turns out, is one of the #1 barriers for folks into getting help. So, I'm glad that Danny's Ride is available and doing so much for people. And Gordon, you mentioned medication-assisted treatment when you were talking about harm reduction, And I'm wondering, like, if you could tell us, how does MAT, or medication-assisted treatment approach, complement the whole person approach to treatment, which includes behavioral therapy, psychosocial supports, and wraparound services?
So when we talk about like that whole person, we need to think in a very broad picture. What is happening to the individual, what they're struggling, where their strengths are. So we talked about transportation as one of those social determinants, but we also need to look at employment. We need to look at family relationships. We need to look at where their health issues are. We know because of some of the substances being used, serious health issues are emerging. We've known for a long time, some are short-term and some are long-term effects, and alcohol is one example of it, right? So we have all these social determinant factors being in. The introduction of an MAT allows them to function. So, for instance, if an individual is on an MAT, they are able to still go to work. They're able to pay their mortgage. Now we don't have a housing issue. So, again, I'm simplifying it. It's not that easy as we work on it. I wish it was a lot easier, actually. But I think as we introduce the MAT, we can do it. We can also not look at just MAT as medication in drug and alcohol, but how about the mental health? We said co-occurring is so big. So having someone stabilize that, maybe, I'll give an example of bipolar, right? They're able to function and do their daily activities. They're able to interact with individuals where they're not being placed in hospital settings. They're able to stay in the community. Having all that functioning, again, all these different domains and these social determinants are still being able to be met. They're being worked on, but it's not a vacuum. It's all these pieces, and I think having the MAT allows the individual to keep functioning, and that's important because how are they going to build hope if they're not getting, segments of light? We got to poke holes into that fabric of addiction, and those holes are the light that comes through, and that's part of MAT's work.
Yeah, that's so true. And Gordon, I wonder if that was a switch for you, as Narcan was, that you were totally in favor of MAT now, but was there a point where you were like, oh, this is not really helpful? And
Absolutely. So my changing moment was actually giving Narcan to someone right on the front doorsteps of our building. People were walking past, the person turned blue, came out, and I came from law enforcement, so I'm a first responder by heart. I mean, that's just what I did. And being able to save a life and have this person come to was an amazing feeling. I mean, talking about adrenaline rush. Again, that moment will never switch. And I've had multiple opportunities, and to see people just get healthy and happy. I've also, unfortunately, been where people have died, and that has changed, drastically. That when I look at realistically, come on, life or death, how could I not choose life? So it wasn't a long process when I experienced that. So I'm so thankful that I got the experience. It sounds weird. Someone's overdose is a thing that I'm thankful for, but the reverse of that overdose changed how I approach people and my attitude, and hopefully starts putting, a knock on some of the stereotypes that are out there.
yeah. So Gordon, I don't want to put you on the hot seat, but I have another question for you from the audience. So are there supports for individuals that work in the MAT field and struggle with addiction recovery, or the mental health field and struggle with addiction recovery? Where does someone find MAT support in this situation?
So yes, there's definitely support. I think the question was about an employee staff.
Yes, someone who's working in the mental health field.
So I don't know what the numbers are in the field, but I know when I started 30 years ago, and I would probably say 90% of the people that I worked with were in recovery, not necessarily on MAT. But I think many of those remained in recovery today that I work with that are on MATs. And so whether I take a blood pressure medication or someone's diabetic and has a pump, what is the difference? So I think having a discussion, one, I think with a doctor, having a primary care physician, I think they're more informed than they've ever been, and they can guide you towards what is the right dosing for an individual so they can function. Look, we are no different than any other person that we serve. So if I'm advocating for an individual to be healthy in the community and work and function, I would be, I'm actually not sure what I would call myself anymore if I wasn't supporting an individual doing that. Part of my staff, actually, half of my staff are CRSs, Certified Recovery Specialists, so people in recovery, lived experience. That is more valuable to me, equally valuable to any education that myself or any of my other staff have received. So, yeah, I think there's avenues to do that. I think also making sure that you're prepared. I think this resilience is a big part of it, that are you prepared and what do you want to say and what do you not want to say about yourself using that experience? I think as our field, we're a people person field. We develop relationships, and I think they're powerful. If you want to share that experience, it will allow you to move forward. But I absolutely believe that you can be on an MAT, you can be functioning, you can do everything that any one of us do, because you are no different from us. So that's the message I would give to that person that asked that question.
Okay, great, thank you. And you mentioned peers, and another audience question is, where can I find ongoing education to learn how to support my peers in recovery? And that's a question for anyone to answer?
Well, I'm going to look next because I think NAMI is a huge support, and I direct a lot of family members and peers towards that. So I'm going to let you answer that a little bit.
Thank you, Gordon. NAMI has not only support groups both for peers and for their family members and friends. We define family very broadly. But we have education courses. Everything NAMI does is free of charge, doesn't require a referral. The education courses typically meet one day or one evening a week over the course of 8 weeks. And again, there's one that's available for peers and another that's available for family and friends. And it is really comprehensive, covers all sorts of topics from what different diagnoses might mean to how to build resiliency, to communication with medical providers and with others, work on developing relationships. It's a great course. And again, all of our courses are taught by people who have lived experience. And they are then trained through the National NAMI organization. And the education courses are evidence-based. So they are really solid. And I would encourage anyone to attend. We have one going now. But we have a table downstairs. Contact the local NAMI office. And Janine, who is here in our office, is here in the room, rather. Feels like the office. And you can talk to Janine, and she can give you all of the information that you would like about the programming and get registered for the next class coming up.
Thank you, Maggie. And Cynthia, here is what I would call a practical question about Danny's Ride. Is there an income limit to be eligible for the services?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question, because no, there is no income level. There is no insurance required. All you need to do is be involved in the recovery community and need to get a ride somewhere that's going to support that recovery. There is no judgment. There's no questionnaire. There's a simple form that your support person would fill out just requesting a ride. There's no judgment. It's if you need a ride, contact Danny's Ride.
All right, awesome. Thank you. And Maggie, I'm going to direct this question to you. So the holidays in particular can be a challenging time for someone in recovery. In your experience, what are some of the best practices to find resiliency and additional strength during these challenging times?
NAMI did a study not too long ago that found that 64% of people living with a mental health disorder had their symptoms worsen during the holidays. And, I've had people with or without a diagnosis say, who are these people who are having happy holidays? It's a contradiction in terms. I'm stressed, I'm exhausted. And I think one of the most important things that we can all do, regardless of whether we have a diagnosis, is give up this idea of a perfect Hallmark movie holiday. It doesn't have to happen. And we need to be kind to ourselves. And we also need to remember that there's not really a right or wrong. We need to do what works for us and for our families during the holidays, not what everybody else is telling us is what we need to do. And we can change traditions. If it makes you happy to continue a wonderful family tradition, do it. If it doesn't make you happy and it's just making you stressed, come up with a new tradition. That's absolutely fine. And, be aware of where you're at. Check in with yourself and say, am I getting stressed? Is this starting to get to me? And you can also approach it as thinking what you would say to a friend. I know very often around the holidays, finances are an issue for a lot of people, and they worry that they might not be able to, say, buy nice enough presents for their friends and family. Well, if you knew that someone close to you was struggling with that, would you care if you got a really nice present for them? Or would you rather that they felt good and just enjoyed your relationship? And, for the December holidays, for anybody who is a person of faith in the audience, remember the reason. It's really not about all the spending and the parties and all that. Go back to the roots of the holidays, and that can help ground you in what it's all about. And, again, talk to other people. You're not alone in this. There can be a sense of community and thinking, oh, we're all rushing around. Let's stop. Let's take some time. Let's just have a simple dinner and enjoy the season.
Thank you, Maggie. And unfortunately, capitalism has really taken the holidays in a different direction, and sometimes the media is not always, the best support during that time. Thank you. So this is a question for Cynthia and Maggie. So with regard to stigma, how can we improve our response regarding trauma-informed care? And Cynthia, I'll let you go first.
Thank you. So stigma is so huge, and Danny's Ride realizes this, and I think what I love so much about Danny's Ride is that it is all about respect. The rides are provided by Uber and Lyft drivers. They don't know who you are. They don't know why you're being picked up. They don't care. So there's no stigma. I think just feeling like a human being that you're getting a ride just on your time. So it's flexible. It's your schedule. It's about you. Because if you don't have control of your life, how can you make that next step? So it's totally no stigma allowed in Danny's Ride. So you can hold your head high, get where you need to go, get your ride. You don't have to worry about paying. You just have to worry about taking care of yourself. So I think that's something that was recognized in Danny's Ride when we started, of how to make this a very, very cool program. So that's my bit.
Stigma's still here. We all know that. We're making progress. NAMI is working really hard, both on a local and state and national level, to get rid of the stigma surrounding mental illness. But it's not perfect. And we know that stigma can affect everything. It's one of the most significant reasons people don't seek treatment for their illness. And I think there's a lot of progress being made as we learn about the physiological basis for mental illness, and we learn about the impact of trauma, which is why trauma-informed care has been something that we've heard so much about recently. As people begin to understand the impact of that trauma, more and more they realize the truth that mental illness is an illness just like any physical illness. And it is not, we know it's not a character weakness, and it's something that can be treated. And as people come to realize that, the stigma's slowly but surely going away.
Great, thank you both. Here's a question for the entire panel from the audience. what are your suggestions for maintaining your own resilience? Professionals are not immune to the stress when helping others. Great question.
So for me, faith is really a big part of where I can put my head down at the end of the night and know that I did everything I could that day, knowing tomorrow I'm going to have another shot at helping someone else. But I do believe faith and family, I said earlier in the discussion, we're people that connect and serve, I just think by nature, whether it's in our field or just generally as a human population, we want to connect. And so I buy into everything that I tell everyone. I mean, I'm connected with so many different people. I'm a coach, I'm a teacher. I stay busy, I stay too busy sometimes. But I think that allows me to really fight the good fight, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that to a great extent. You know, the work that we all do is difficult, and it's so important to maintain a work-life balance, to do the things that we need to do. But I think a lot of what drives us is simply the work itself and the inspiration of the people that we're serving. And, you know, we are not, I don't want to make necessarily a differentiation between providers and the people that we're serving, because the providers too can be living with a variety of mental health disorders. I live with anxiety and depression. And so it's really important to take care of ourselves and to do all the things that we're saying, and to manage physical wellness too, because there's such a connection between physical wellness and mental wellness.
Wow, that's such a good answer. And I know when I'm on the phone, I speak both to the riders and to the providers, and the providers are stressed out. And then the next week, there's a new provider because someone had to leave for whatever reason. So that's a revolving door, and I'm getting more people involved and trained. And then the riders are stressed. And there are some days, honestly, when someone needed a ride from Harrisburg to Erie, and it couldn't be done. It just couldn't be done. And I cried. So it's hard, but as you said, it's all about like the mission, like knowing that we're making a difference. So for every, let's say, failure, I'll have someone that says, God bless you, thank you, you changed my life, you saved my life. So I can go to bed happy. I can also run, and if I didn't run, I would be really in bad shape. So after this today, I'm going out for a run because I need to regroup. But I think that was a really good question. I thank whoever asked that, because everyone, we've all got our issues, and we're all dealing with a lot. So supporting each other is huge, and just knowing that we're all in a different space is very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. It's a balance between, caretaking of others and self-care, right? That's so important. So thank you all. And our final question for today, and this is for the entire panel. And we also have a question from the audience that kind of coincides with this, is how can we get more education out to all of the community about stigma and about the misinformation that include recovery options for all? And do you think having more recovery support coordinators will help? And what are the resources and programming that are missing in our community? Where are the gaps? So, Gordon, do you want to field this one?
So I think events like recovery walks that are emerged in the communities are really, really important. One, it allows individuals who may not be in recovery to walk side by side with someone and get to know them. And if you've ever participate in an event like today, you come out, they're free, you walk through the doors, you get to understand what's happening. I think that takes a big part, because it's the lack of knowledge, I think, that makes us pause at times. And we can apply that in anything, but truly in substance abuse and in addiction, it applies tenfold. So I think just having some understanding is really important, and participating, even if it's something simple. I was thinking about Christmas time, and at our recovery center, we asked the community to donate in the local trees. We have ornaments, that you can purchase, that we can buy presents, not so much for the presents, but it's actually just to let someone was thinking of you. That's the important message that's underlying there. I know it's displayed by maybe a gift and an event that happens that particular day or Thanksgiving Day to sit down as a group and bring in turkeys and have pie and have conversation. You know, we're all humans. We have to function. So I think just getting out and being a part and getting involved is the first thing anyone should do.
I think that's a great answer. I think one of the most important voices, if not the most important voice in getting rid of stigma, is yours. You know, when people tell their own story of hope and recovery, it lets other people know that that recovery is possible. And, you know, we have a local legislator, Mike Schlossberg, who several years ago went public, for lack of a better word, with his own struggles with anxiety and depression. And he described what happened to him as a different kind of Me Too movement, because as he went out into the community and said, I'm struggling with mental illness, he can't count the number of people who have said to him, Me Too. So it builds community, it demonstrates to people that you can live incredibly successfully with a mental health diagnosis.
So true. And I would just like to add that I think it's very important that everyone gets their story out there, because one thing I do as part of Danny's Ride is I go to community events and outreach. I was just at a Rotary group last week, and I was so surprised that people were still talking about, well, they made bad choices, and why did they go to heroin, and just not getting that it can happen to anyone, and there's a lot going on, and that it's like, it was almost that's their problem, not mine. So no, it's everyone's problem. And I think once we realize that we're all connected, that's when we come with strength. It's all about strength. If we know we've got to support each other, it's not just your story, it's everyone's story. So get it out there.
Thank you all. And I go back to it takes a village. It really does. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who was here with us this morning and who submitted questions. And I apologize if we did not get to your question, but we will answer them on the website at the end of the conference. And I want to, again, thank the panel members. Thank you, Cynthia Phillips from Danny's Ride, and Gordon Hornig from St. Luke's Penn Foundation, and Maggie Murphy from NAMI of Lehigh Valley. Thank you all. And thank you all for being here.